What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another Firearms Legal Protection webinar. Exciting topic tonight. We got people tuning in from all over. We got Chris Cox saying, "Red Leader standing by." Love the Star Wars reference. Got somebody chiming in from Tampa, Florida. Got people probably from all over. Give us a shout out. Let us know where you're from. We're excited to do this topic because this is a topic that is very universal. It applies to gun people. It applies to non-gun people. It applies to just about anybody who wants to protect themselves. And so many of us have considered protecting ourselves with a lethal option that a lot of times we kind of skip to that and forget or don't pay enough attention to protecting ourselves with non-lethal, or probably a better term, the less than lethal options. So tonight I am joined with probably the best man to talk about this subject matter, John Correia from Active Self-Protection, who has watched more self-defense footage, analyzed the absolute crud out of all of it, more than anybody I have ever met. So, John, welcome to the show. Excited to have you on. We're going to talk all about this topic, the what, the when, the how, the why, the legal, all that stuff. So, welcome.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here, Plenty. Thanks for having me, man. It's, obviously, we've been partners with FLP for years and years. I was like, gosh, it's been 4, 5, I don't know how many years. It's been a lot of years. So, yeah. Always great to interact together and educate people and help them. So, thanks for having me.
Of course. So I think we can just kick right into it. Less than lethal.
All right, let's do it. Let's talk about this idea. See, here's the thing, man. I started carrying a gun in 2006, and people, when you get into that world, I started carrying a gun in 06 because I was running a retail establishment, and managers were getting mugged for Xbox 360s and PlayStation 3s that Christmas. And that tells you how long it was. I was talking to people on my BlackBerry Storm and stuff. And so I started carrying a gun because I don't want to get killed, right? But then I also started studying martial arts. And it wasn't too long when you start realizing, to use the phrase of my friend Chuck Haggard, the legendary lawman, he says, you want to have something between a harsh word and a gun. And I'm a martial artist. I've been studying martial arts for 16 plus years now. And so for a long time, I was thinking, oh, that's what my empty-handed skills are for. But also, you recognize, A, not everybody has that ability to invest that for a number of reasons. B, even for those of us who do, there's always a chance that I'm going to get hurt. So anyways, I think that the less lethal option really helps us here. So we've got kind of a presentation here. I would say as well, man, for folks that want to comment, we're going to answer questions a little bit later. I'm going to blitz through some information here about less lethal tools to give you some of that. If you don't know who I am, so I have run Active Self-Protection since 2011. I'm a firearms instructor as well as a use of force instructor. I am a consulting expert for firearms legal protection on cases when they come up. I do that outside of that as well. Currently working 3 cases on expert witness stuff. And my bailiwick is analyzing use of force, like Plenty said. So let's talk about a little bit about why would we have a less lethal? So that's the next slide there. That about 80% of assaults every year in America are simple assaults. Now, here's the thing. Where do I get that from? I get that from the Bureau of Justice Statistics. And of all assaults, we got about 20% of them are aggravated assaults, which would be assaults that are either done with some kind of a weapon or result in great bodily harm or death. Well, death would be considered probably a murder at that point. So it would result in a great bodily harm. And that's about 20% of assaults. About 80% of assaults are simple assaults, and a gun will simply not solve that problem. And that's one of the reasons that we want to have a less lethal tool, because if somebody assaults me, but it's not an aggravated assault, in other words, it's not likely or known to cause death or great bodily harm, and I pull a gun and shoot them, then I'm the one who's guilty of aggravated assault, and I become the aggressor because of the standard of proportionality. Remember, in legal use of force, our force response must be proportional. Now, lethal force is lethal force. If I am faced with a lethal threat, then a lethal response is the right action. So it's not, if he pulls a knife, I have to pull a knife. No, if he represents an objective, reasonable, lethal threat, I can respond to that to stop it with lethal force and do so in moral and legal ways. But if it's a less than lethal threat, then we must respond proportionally. In other words, when somebody uses words, I can't punch them in the face. If somebody is being mean to me and using words or saying things I don't like, and I whop them upside the head and slap them, I'm guilty of assault. If someone assaults me, they whop me upside the head, maybe I said something stupid, man. Maybe I said something they disagreed with politically, or I said something that they found offensive, and they punched me in the face. They've committed assault. But if I then draw a gun and shoot them, that is generally going to get me in significant trouble. So now you might say, okay, well, my empty-handed skills will get me out of that problem. And maybe you are a significant martial artist and your kung fu is strong, but those also carry risks. And I want to recognize that as somebody who studied martial arts for 16 years, I started studying martial arts basically right when I started carrying a gun. It's a long story. I have a second degree black belt in a derivative of Kempo known as Umas, and I'm a white belt in Jiu-Jitsu. And, anytime you get on the mat, anytime you step off with somebody, that carries a risk with it. So I want you to kind of recognize that. And listen, I love empty-handed skills. I recommend that you have them. They're very useful. If you watch our main YouTube channel, you will hear me say on it all the time that empty-handed skills are important. Now, I heard some folks say some other stuff too, like, oh, I carry a knife, and that's my less lethal force, or a baton, or a sap, or a jack, or a Kubotan. I recently did a short on this. I got one sitting here talking about my flashlight as a Kubotan, right? And if you understand what a Kubotan is, a short stick. Now, usually you see people talk about those short sticks with the real thin ones with the real fine point on them. Recognize if I have something in my hand like this and I use my hand as a fist, that's probably going to be seen as ordinary force unless I purposefully did that to use it like a roll of quarters and make it stronger, and I articulate it that way. But if I use the end and I strike with the bezel like this, that is highly likely to cause somebody a significant gash, a broken bone, an orbital, something like that, and that raises the threat level, okay? They're generally considered lethal force. Certainly a knife. Somebody says, well, I carry a knife as my less lethal option. No, a knife is going to, you touch somebody with a knife and you stab them with it, you're going to put them in the hospital. That's that standard of great bodily harm, is that it's going to cause permanent disfigurement, significant loss of limb use. It's going to cause protracted stay in the hospital or one of those kinds of things, and therefore that is a lethal tool. Same thing with a sap or a jack, depending on where you live. In 99% of places that I'm aware of, use of a sap, you whop somebody upside the head with a sap, you're going to put them in the hospital. You're going to knock them out. You're going to cause them a big concussion. That's considered great bodily harm. Okay. So therefore, in our culture today, really, there are pretty much two options for a less lethal tool. And that is what I have dubbed here, not I've dubbed, but what they call a conductive electrical weapon, or some kind of chemical spray. And we'll talk about different ones there. Two common choices, again, a conductive electrical weapon and a pepper spray. So I recommend having something like that, something between a harsh word and a gun, certainly for those people that don't have significant empty-handed skills. Even for those who do have significant empty-handed skills, I always say a pepper spray is like a long-range eye poke. And if you've been in martial arts for any length of time, you know what a useful tool an eye poke can be. And if I can give that eye poke from 10 or 12 feet away, chef's kiss, right? And that gets me out of the trouble. So let's talk first, though, about conductive electrical weapons. And a lot of people, these are colloquially called tasers. But remember that taser is a brand name, all right? So taser is kind of like Kleenex in that, Kleenex is a brand name, not a product. And so that's why you'll see them called tissues or whatever. The difference, though, is that the taser is their way of doing business. Their modus operandi is patented. And so it is under copyright. So stun guns are not the same thing as tasers, right? So the stun gun is what's on the left. Okay. So on the left side there, you see this lady with this little pink thing, and you can see the spark across it. So what you got there is basically you've got a big capacitor that when you push the button, it charges the capacitor, and it's got two electrical connectors around it that are separated by some space. Well, if you connect those two, then what that does is it sends that electrical charge that's charged through the capacitor through whatever that medium is. It hurts. However, they're not a very useful self-defense tool, and I'll tell you why. Number one, the stun gun on the left, it only works on pain. It is simply, it hurts. And so you're going to try to get people to stop doing what they're doing because it hurts them. Number two, the ones that are available commercially generally don't hurt that bad. They hurt, don't get me wrong, but they're not so bad that they force you to quit. They just make you kind of miserable. Number three, they require you to be in contact with the person. So if you touch them with it and then they jump away, now the stun gun is no longer working. Okay. Now, the taser, on the other hand, is, again, a brand name. What you're looking at there is an X26, I believe. And what you see there on the picture on the right is, you notice it has two little barbs that it's spitting out in front of it. So that is actually by a compressed gas charge, shoots those two barbs out to stick in somebody. And it also, you see those little dots around them. It sends out this little confetti cloud. We say it's, it's electrical party time. What that really are is their identifiers, so it can tell you what cartridge it was and those things. So it sends those two darts to try to stick into the person and get at least 12 inches of spread. If you get at least 12 inches of spread and you get an electrical connection both inside of a single person, then what that does is then the electrical charge is pulsed such that it overrides your control of your muscles. So it is designed to pulse electrically at a particular frequency that overrides the control of the brain over your muscles, locks your muscles up, and then lays you down. I mean, you've probably seen somebody tased, and when it works effectively, they lock right up, timber, and they fall over, and the fight is at least over for a little while. Also hurts like the dickens. I have been tased, and it is a miserable, miserable ride. Usually on the police officer version, what you get is the first time they pop you with it, it's 10 seconds. And then they can, it stops at that point. They can press it again in 5-second increments until their battery runs out. On the civilian side, the Taser Pulse or the Taser Bolt are both sold to private citizens. And they both basically, if you pop somebody, they will go until the battery expires, somewhere around 30 to 40 seconds to as much as a minute. That is designed for you to drop it and then get away. So, however, in the LA Times study, number 3 there, they found that in Los Angeles police uses of force, that the taser was about 50% of the time it was effective. And that's not a high level of effectiveness. And so it doesn't solve the problem as often as we'd like it to. In fact, I'm kind of one of the guys that's now calling, and I would really like to see law enforcement move back towards OC spray and away from the taser. So not the most effective and not as effective as I'd like them to be. The problem with the taser is that you have to have 12 inches of spread and both prongs have to penetrate. So if you're wearing heavy clothes or an overshirt, even sometimes, they're probably not going to penetrate enough. If you miss one of the barbs, it's not going to work. And there are a number of people that you should never use that taser on, depending on different factors. So those are a less lethal tool, but they can be very problematic. We've seen several instances recently of improper uses of tasers by law enforcement officers leading to people being set on fire when they've got flammables on them. And that's obviously a really negative outcome. And it's going to lead to some significant consequences for the officers, for the department, and for the community. So the third one that we generally, the one that I generally recommend is our next slide, and that's pepper spray. There are several kinds of sprays, but what I really want to focus on is pepper spray. There's a couple others as well that you get. You might hear these under different brand names. People call it Mace. Mace is a brand. Okay. So like Kleenex, Mace is a brand, and actually a brand that I wouldn't necessarily recommend. Pepper spray is also called OC spray. OC stands for oleoresin capsicum, and that is the active ingredient in it. Okay. I will tell you this, that in pepper sprays, almost everything that's sold in stores stinks. Almost everything that you just walk into a Walmart or a gas station or a hardware store or Cabela's or one of those places, they almost all stink. And so you've got to know what you're looking at, because they're going to sell it to you on false and misleading metrics. They're going to say, oh, this is 10% OC. Well, that means that it's 90% carrier or inert and 10% whatever effective when it is, but it doesn't tell you how good that 10% of stuff is and if it's the good that you want to use. They'll also say, oh, I've seen some, well, this has so many Scoville heat units. Guys, we're not talking about making a spicy meal here. We're talking about incapacitating somebody. So Scoville heat units are really completely irrelevant. because they can be effective on differing levels to differing people. What you want to look for is major capsaicinoids, and that's our second bullet point there, percent MC, not percent OC, all right? You want to look at percent major capsaicinoids, and here's the news flash. If whoever it is selling the OC spray does not report the major capsaicinoids or doesn't mention them in their branding, there's a reason for that. It's because they stink. It's because they're below that threshold, I guarantee you. So you want at least 0.5% major capsaicinoids. That's a bare minimum. At 0.5% MC, you start to get good effect. Anything below that is sketchy at best. So a lot of times on stuff where you'll see it online, you see somebody sprayed with pepper spray, it doesn't do much. My first kind of inkling is that we jokingly call it's like a gas station pepper spray that has a low threshold of percent MC, and so it's not going to do anything. Currently on the marketplace, 1.33% is about as high as is out there. You start to see some 1.4 is particularly Palm, which is up there, is about 1.4. I mean, Mo is Mo better in this particular case. And then with the other thing you want to look for in a pepper spray is good batch consistency. So I'm not here to do a branding thing for you or to tell you which one to buy, but I'm telling you batch consistency matters. So somebody who knows what they're doing and they can repeat their process batch after batch after batch. Higher percent major capsaicinoids is more better. Once you do that, go do your research on the various companies. You'll find there's only a couple of them that meet that particular boundary, okay? And I will say this as well, that that it has a lower threshold of use. And of course, if I draw a firearm, I have to face a deadly threat. If I face an ordinary threat and I draw a firearm, in most jurisdictions, I'm going to get myself in some significant legal trouble myself. Whereas the use of an OC spray is a very low level of force. However, I would say, arguing, if you're going to carry a taser, for instance, you are causing someone injury with a taser, because if you use the taser, you're putting barbs in them. Those barbs are going to have to come out, and you are causing them physical injury. Whereas with OC spray, you're not causing anybody physical injury. Its likelihood of causing death or great bodily harm is incredibly low. In fact, lower than punching somebody in the face by a good long margin. So it has a very low threshold of use. Now, it's higher threshold of use than using your words. So if somebody's just mad at you and they're questioning your species and your lineage and your parenting and those things, you can't OC spray them because you're mad at them, okay? So that's assault. And in some places, a chemical assault is taken very, very seriously. But you can use a force multiplier, a less lethal tool, at a reasonable objective threat of ordinary force. And so that is a pretty big deal. So it's a low threshold of force of use kind of issue, okay? So let's talk about the why on this just a little bit. Why I like this and why I think it's a really good idea. Because I really do think that pepper spray can be kind of thought of like a long-range eye poke, but it's a long-range eye poke without any physical damage. Plenty, would you go ahead and go to the next slide? That OC spray is like a long-range eye poke, but it's a long-range eye poke with no physical damage. You know, you poke somebody in the eye for real. If you've ever watched MMA fights or something like that, or, a real regular fight, and somebody gets poked in the eye with a finger, somebody reaches out with a hand and pokes somebody in the eye, it causes significant physical damage. Now, the OC spray, on the other hand, will cause a lot of pain, but no physical damage at the end of the day. If you have to go hands-on with somebody, if they've been sprayed, they will be significantly diminished. What we're going to see is what happens in several real-life instances of somebody getting OC sprayed. And if they get hit with the hot sauce, and it is the decent stuff, and it gets them in their mucous membranes, man, it definitely takes the fight right out of people. They will be significantly diminished. Now, of course, as the private citizen, what you're going to use OC spray for is you're going to use it to break contact, right? So somebody is an imminent physical threat. They've said, I'm about to kick your behind. They blow up on you. What, you want to fight me? No, I don't want to fight you, man. Yeah, well, it's on. I'm going to kick your butt. Nope, you're done, buddy. And then hopefully they're going, for a minute, and you can skedaddle out of there, call the cops and those things, okay? So, and then if they still come, hopefully they're significantly diminished because they're in so much pain and they can't see well. Because what happens is the mechanism of oleoresin capsicum, your eyes will slam shut and will not be able to open. You could force them open if you're really diligent about it, but they will close. You're going to get ringing in the ears. You're going to get a gush of mucus out of your nose and through your mouth. And so that'll be a problem. Now, without that diminishment, you always have the potential to be hurt in a physical fight. All right. So I know everybody thinks it's our running joke that every man thinks that he's a Gold Glove boxer and is a fighting expert. Few actually truly are. And the more that I have trained and sparred, and the more that I have done those things, I'm like, man, I don't want to do that. So that's why we go into the OC spray. Okay. So let's talk about the what again a little bit. I just want to kind of keep you familiar with it. OC means oleoresin capsicum. That's the effective ingredient in pepper spray, because OC is what makes peppers hot. Oleoresin capsicum is what makes peppers hot. You'll also hear it called bear spray or dog spray. Those are usually more marketing terms. All right. I just want to make sure that you understand those things. So when something is called bear spray, what that usually means, if it's called bear spray, is it's a fog. We'll talk about the different kinds here in just a minute. And it is a large can of high velocity fogger or cone that is designed to go out a long way, but it does have some negative aspects to that too. In some places, like Canada, for instance, you're not allowed to carry pepper spray, but you can have a dog spray that is designed to use on dogs, which of course you'd never carry in Canada in order to use on people, because that would be a crime there. But if you were carrying it to protect yourself against dogs and then happen to use it on people, from what I've been told, that's generally considered okay. Okay. Now, Mace at the bottom there is a brand name, was originally not OC. Originally, it was made out of CN gas. So that's another term. And then there's CN gas, there's CS gas. You also see today what's called PAVA, PAVA. And all of those will then end up leading to a place where you end up not having anything to go with on those. So Mace is there. I'm sorry, my earbuds have died, so I'm going to go away from them and just come to this. Let me verify here real quick that my settings are correct here. There we go. Okay, I think I'm right there. Sorry, I had to change things. My stuff died. So this isn't necessarily Mace. Mace is its own brand name, okay? So let's talk a little bit more about the what again, okay? So again, OC percentage, not what you want. Scoville heat units, not what you want. The effective stat is the percentage of major capsaicinoids, okay? 0.2% is really super weak sauce. 1.4% is the filthy mean stuff, all right? And so that's what I want to kind of have you gravitate towards, is looking for percent major capsaicinoids. And then let's look at the types here as well, a little bit about what different ones you have. So you're going to see different spray patterns that come out of there. Number one, you see a fog or a mist, and it's just exactly what you think. It's a highly aerosolized. The nozzle is designed to put out a fog. It's very short range. It's highly aerosolized, and that means it's very fast acting. And sometimes you'll see those fogs that are used for bear spray or used as well in crowd control. A cone is like pretty much like a mist, but it's not a mist in a whole push this way. It's a mist that's in a circle. So it's like a circle design mist that kind of opens as it goes out away. The stream, on the other hand, is the longest range, but the least amount of aerosolization. So a stream is like what comes out of a hose, right? A smaller version of that, obviously, but what comes out of a hose. And so it gets to go the farthest, but it's not as aerosolized. So it might take a second or two once it hits what it's doing for that the OC to come out. Now, water, sometimes you'll see some water ones because that's a carrier. So what carries it is water, gel, or foam. Now, water as a carrier is inert. It won't hurt nothing and won't mess with nobody. Gel, that's what the carrier is. It's gel rather than water. And the challenge is that gives a significant amount less aerosolization than the water does. And foam is like, it's gel, but with bubbles, which is kind of cool, right? And I know some people say, well, I want to carry gel because I don't want to, have an exposure myself. Well, the first thing that you are looking for is you're looking for it to affect the person that you use it on. Okay. So my general recommendation to people is to have some kind of a water carrier and a stream as the best solution. Okay. And that will give us the best kind of chance to reach out and touch somebody at a little bit of distance. It also affects them the quickest. Okay. So those are what we want there. And that's kind of those types. All right. So let's talk about size real quick. All right. There's always a compromise here between portability and concealability and capacity. This is like carrying a handgun, right? You're not going to get an easy to shoot, high capacity handgun in a super small package. It just doesn't happen that way. You're always, and the companies are always trying to build a better mousetrap and make one more like what we need, but they're always going to be a compromise between them. In situations where concealment isn't an issue, I mean, mo hot sauce, mo better, right? That's if when we're talking about home defense, take the big canister, and stick it by the front door, and you don't care if it's concealed or whatever. In situations where portability isn't an issue, bigger is also better. But a small portable unit can be useful for its intended use outside the home. So I was out and about this afternoon with my wife. I'm leaning over to you. And so I carry this little guy with me everywhere I go. And yes, it has a pink band on it because I'm securing my manhood. Super portable, just sits in my front pocket and goes with me everywhere as a long range eye poke. In fact, I've had to use it 3 separate times over the last 15 years or so. Thankfully, the 3 times that I've had to use it all on canines that were very effective in that particular one. So I think that, again, a small portable unit can be useful as long as the nozzle that we have it with does the intended purpose and it has enough range to get us where we want. Okay. Now let's talk about what it does. Let's look at part 5 at its effects here. Here's the thing: it affects all mucous membranes. I will tell you, we have a joke at Active Cell Protection. We have a $1,000 reward for the first person that actually gets an exposure of somebody who needed to be OC'd in their sensitive nether regions. So far, no dice, but I'm sure at some point it's going to come up that somebody is going to flash their bits and pieces at somebody and get OC sprayed. Okay, so any mucous membrane it affects. And here's what it does. The eyes are burning. You get involuntary closure. You get tears and inability to see from all of that. In your lungs, you will get coughing. You will get a feeling of shortness of breath, and you will get pain. Here's the interesting part of the respiratory effects is that in those respiratory effects, OC is actually a bronchodilator. It's a vasodilator as well. So it'll cause a whole bunch of opening of the lungs. However, it also causes a significant buildup of mucus. So that's when you get a lot of coughing and those things, okay? There's no digestive effects, but what we see a lot of times is mouth and throat irritation and coughing, as well as the mucus production causes vomiting all the time. So what I see happen all the time is somebody gets sprayed with the OC, and then and with all the snot and those things in it, and, they start swallowing snot, and then with the throat irritation and all that stuff, it gets stuck in their throat, and that starts to induce vomiting, okay? Now, effectiveness-wise, I'm just going to tell you, OC spray is effective on 85 to 90% of the population. About 10% of people, to as much as 15% of people, are just low response to OC spray. It's just the reality of things. I actually got in trouble with a major manufacturer over this who said that was not true and 100% of people are affected. And I said, hogwash. What we see again and again and again on actual incidents and from spraying officers in police academies and in recurring training, it's about 10% of people. It just doesn't really affect a ton. That said, I do like a 90% effective, less lethal tool over a 50% less effective tool, less lethal tool like empty-handed skills. Now, you do need to beware as well of intoxicated, mentally altered, and excited delirium people. And the reason that you want to be cautious with those folks is when somebody is intoxicated, that can cause them to do really stupid things and start clawing at their face. If they're mentally altered, it just can affect them in ways that you can't anticipate. It'll still affect them. The only ones it really doesn't is if somebody is in a state of what's called excited delirium. That's a generally fatal condition, by the way, which is a thing that mostly law enforcement has to deal with. And you spray them with the hot sauce, it may not really affect them because they're already in that kind of condition from their excited delirium. So, all right, last one here. Let's talk about the effects of it as well. In studies that have been done again and again, we don't see any negative correlation in studies. OC is a bronchodilator. And in multiple studies, no additional bronchial constriction in asthmatics noted. Now, that said, because asthmatics are acutely aware of breathing dysfunction, the effects of OC can cause panic attacks. I also know of one instance, that the city of Phoenix OC sprayed a guy. He ended up dying from huge mucus production and dying of suffocation of that. There's a whole bunch of combined effects of the way that they treated him after that and how they kept him and those things. So I know of one lethal use of OC spray. Very, very rare, okay? So I know people say, well, I'm not going to carry OC spray because I have asthma. I don't think that's a good reason. But as always, consult your physician, okay? So let's talk briefly. We've only got a few minutes left, but I do want to talk a little bit about when you should use OC spray, because that's the kind of thing that we want to see. An OC spray should be employed when you reasonably believe that someone represents an imminent threat of physical harm to you and yours, not a deadly threat. A deadly threat, in my opinion, requires and should receive a deadly response, such as a firearm. But when somebody is an imminent threat of physical but not deadly harm, that's when an OC spray is very effective. OC spray is not an emergency access item. It should be in hand. Here's the interesting thing. One of the things I always tell folks is this is kind of how I have mine up here. And you can see, I'll pull mine out of my pocket and just palm it, right? And so I'm sitting on it like this. And here's the interesting thing. If I'm just walking and you probably can't tell what is in my hand right now. It's not like having a firearm in my hand at all. Number two, if I am palming an OC spray, it's not the same level of threat that palming a firearm would be, or having a firearm in your hand. So it is not an emergency access item. I don't care what your draw to first shot time is with your OC spray, because if you're using OC spray in that manner, you probably are outside of its use window, okay? And I would also encourage you, never threaten somebody with OC spray. Because when you give somebody time, what you really want to get is you want to get it in their eyes, in their nose, in their mouth, and in their ears. That's what you would like to get. All those mucous membranes is where you're going to cause the pain and suffering that'll get them to leave you alone. So if you threaten them, hey man, leave me alone, or I'm going to OC spray you, or I'm going to pepper spray you, then that gives them time to think about countermeasures. So that gives them time to get their hands in the way. That gives them time to kind of, keep their head, turn away, turn to the side, and those things. And you don't want them to have that. If possible, and it's the effective time, you want them going, oh yeah, like this, and they're, eyes wide open, mouth wide open, breathing in. There it is. There's my opening right there. And that's when you want to do that. So I have an interesting video of that for you to show you. This particular one is at it's a computer repair shop that the guy has dropped his computer off at to get fixed. And he's getting in an argument with guys behind the counter, because the guy behind the counter has said, well, hey man, you dropped it off and you agreed to, I think, a $49 diagnostic fee. And the guy's going to get frustrated about that and say, no, I just want my stuff. I want out of here. And the guy's like, well, you got to pay your diagnostic fee to do that. And the dude doesn't want to do that. So watch the threat kind of brew up here as they continue to have that. As the guy's now going to come back and go, oh, I'm taking my stuff. And now our owner's like, nah, man, you're not taking your stuff. That's just not how this is going. So there's a big discussion. Now the physical conflict has started already, and you can see he's grabbed a hold of him, whatever. So in my opinion here, that look, at this point, if they're going to have this physical conflict, now he gets his OC spray out here, but notice now he's got to futz around with it, and now he's threatening with it. And I would say I would not recommend that you threaten people with the OC spray. But when the physical fight is happening, is not the time to do that. He's telling the guy to get out of his store or whatever. He's trespassed the guy. Now the guy's like, no. But notice, because he's threatened, the guy now has his hand out, and he's kind of holding it off there, and no, doesn't have that much time. Now, eventually, because he's got a big old long, this is a very good size fogger that he has here, and trying to get the guy out of his store, well, it's not really going to work for him here. It's a pretty prolonged thing. And again, if you threaten somebody with OC spray, you may not get the kind of effect out of that they want, because I don't think a lot of people are really afraid of it, and unless they've actually been sprayed. I'll tell you, the people who are afraid of being sprayed with OC spray is people who already have been sprayed with OC spray. So you're going to continue to see the argument here. I want to just let you experience kind of all of this as they continue to fight and continue to argue about stuff. And, they're talking about each other's species and parentage. And I think right here is a good time not to OC spray somebody. He's not a physical threat right now. He's simply arguing with you. Earlier, when they were, going hands-on and kind of batting each other back and forth, would have been a good time. But now you see him getting aggressive, and as he's getting aggressive and saying, this is what I'm going to do to you, he gives him the hot sauce and then kicks him out of his store. So once more, you can just kind of see it again. Watch as he gets more aggressive here. And the guy's like, yeah, watch him jut his chin forward. And now that the physical threat shows up, and that's when he gets him. Look at what it does. Instantly takes the fire out of him and gets rid of him. So when do we do that? When we have a brewing threat of physical force. And I know there's going to be some questions about that one. I want to show you at least one more here, or even probably two, because I want you to see these next couple here. So the when part two, again, an OC spray is not great against a lethal threat. It can work if nothing else is available. Here what we have is we have a shoplifter, okay? So this shoplifter is being threatened, or there's got by a security guard. I've talked to this guard, and she's stealing stuff, and he's telling her, hey, you got to get the heck out of here,
I just seen you take it from the aisle over there.
And you can kind of hear him doing that.
All right, get out.
So you can kind of hear him talking to her, and obviously you can tell here, if you've been around meth users any amount of time, you can see from the amount of tooth loss that she has there, as well as her twitchiness, this woman is probably a methamphetamine user, and he's trying to get her out of his store. He's a security guard, right? Now, this one is an interesting one because of how it's going to escalate and de-escalate and escalate and de-escalate to the different uses of force that are available here. So watch what goes down here now.
Hey, put the knife down.
So she gets a knife out, and as she does, he pulls a gun on her, right? Security guard shows her the gun.
Knife down now. Okay. Put the knife
and she's going to drop the knife.
Put it down. Okay, look. Put the knife down.
Now, again, once she drops the knife out of the way, now she's not a deadly threat anymore. If I shoot her at this point, I'm going to prison in all likelihood. Going to pick it up again. That was stupid. Again, she's a meth user, so she's not exactly the smartest person in the history of ever. But she's not threatening him with the knife anymore. So he instead uses the OC to try to get her to not have the capability to hurt him. And look at what the OC spray does. Now, this one's a difficult and interesting one, right? Because she has a knife. It's not actually deployed yet. That guy finally gets the knife out of the way, and now she's screaming, help me, help me, help me. So I don't think that a OC spray is useful against a deadly threat like a knife in that particular case because of what she had. I think it was what was available. We actually have one other one that comes out of Israel. This guy is wearing a camera because so this guy's threatening him with a knife, and he OC sprays him when he's threatening him with a knife, and that drives the guy off. It does an okay job. Now, I wouldn't generally recommend that, but he did that. He's in Israel, and he's got a sign up, and it's a highly politically charged issue for them there in Israel, and this guy's mad at him about it, pulls a knife on him, and our guy OC sprays him. It worked. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that, though. So last one that I'm going to show you here is, again, an OC spray. This guy got kicked out of a club. Oh, okay, this one's great too. Watch these guys come in. It's not the one that I was thinking of, but this one's really good. So they want to kick this guy out of the club, and he's going to get aggressive. This is in Portland, and a big aggressive homeless population there. So he's going to use some physical force to get rid of this guy, and that's his right to do so. He's trespassed him already, told him to leave, and now the guy's getting physically aggressive. Now, watch what goes down here is they're going to continue to kind of, hey, man, and watch him kind of threaten physically, puts his hands in his pockets like he might have something, but I don't really see anything that could be construed as a deadly threat here. That is a physical threat, and when he gets physical, watch the guy get him there twice, and once he does, you see it take a second here. I'm not so sure it's the hottest sauce that ever was, but notice what goes down here as he gets him. The guy's like, man, I've had it with that. And he's going to walk off because he doesn't want any more of that pain. So that's a pretty big deal, right? Can we use it as against the threat of physical force? Yes, we absolutely can. That's when it is most effective. So I know we want to have some time here for our questions. So I think that's probably as far as we are going to get on those today. But I want you to know the when to use it. I want you to know the why to have it, the different tools that are available. I think we got there tonight.
Yeah, I think that's all awesome information. And even just differentiating between the size, the spray patterns, I learned a ton. I think a lot of people learned a lot just about that stuff, that it's not all created equal by any means. And I know a lot of you guys are watching because you are FLP members. You signed up with Firearms Legal Protection. Maybe it was in a license class. Maybe it was through one of John's videos. Maybe you heard about us just randomly on the internet one day. A lot of you are here because of that. And so I just want to quickly play something to just kind of remind you of some of the benefits that you have as a Firearms Legal Protection member, or if you're not yet a member, it's a great time to give it as a gift. Christmas is coming up. If you want to protect friends or family, just want to kind of go through those. So y'all hang tight. This is going to be a very short, about 2-minute video, just reminding you of some of the benefits that you have as an FLP member and how you can get a deal if you want to share this with friends or with family.
Firearms Legal Protection offers several different memberships to whoever is interested in signing up for legal protection. To start, these plans are divided into individual plans and family plan. Some of the plans, benefits, and prices do vary state by state. For the purposes of this webinar, we will look at our most common plans that are available in most states. The individual basic plan is the best value for what benefits you will receive from our service. This plan includes protection in your state of residence. It also includes uncapped payment of attorney fees for defensive criminal cases and civil cases. There is no maximum cap on what FLP will pay on these cases. Firearms Legal Protection memberships also extend to all legal weapons, so even if you don't have a firearm to protect yourself with, that's okay, because we will cover you even if you use a non-lethal weapon to defend yourself with. With the individual basic plan, you also have Defense of Extreme Risk Protection Orders, also known as red flag laws. All plans have access to 24/7 emergency answered attorney hotline, so no matter the time of incident may occur, you can call our hotline and an attorney will pick up immediately for attorney-client privileges. You also have access to the MyFLP mobile app and one of our recently added benefits, expungement of criminal record on non-conviction incidents, is also included as a benefit for all FLP membership plans. Members of all plans also receive access to digital content and special discounts. The next step up is the individual premium plan. This plan is great for those who travel across the country, since this plan has nationwide coverage. This plan includes all of the benefits that were just mentioned for the individual basic plan and several more. The individual premium plan includes payment of bail bond premium, which is generally up to $250,000 in most states. This plan also includes payment of expert witness and investigator fees, if either are needed in your case. There is also coordination of counseling support, payment of lost wages if you are out of work during trial, and incident scene cleanup. The individual premium plan also covers payment for incident-related firearm confiscation, so if your firearm is confiscated, then FLP will write you a check for the value of that firearm. Many FLP members want the same protection to also apply to their family, which is why we also offer the family premium plan to choose from. For just a little bit more, you get all the benefits of the individual basic and individual premium plan, which all applies to your spouse and minor children. We define minor children as any child living with you age 17 and younger. Whether you want the most affordable plan that covers all of the basic benefits, or you want something that has a little bit more, like what is offered in our premium benefits, or maybe you want something that offers complete protection to you and your family, Firearms Legal Protection offers several different benefit plans to choose from that will align with what you are needing. If you are not already protected by Firearms Legal Protection, please click the description below this video where we have a special discount to offer our viewers of this webinar. If you have friends or family who also need this protection, feel free to share this code. We want everyone to enjoy the benefits and protection that Firearms Legal Protection membership plans have to offer. Now, let's get back to discussing our webinar topic today.
All right. So hopefully that was a good refresher. If any of you guys just kind of needed a reminder on what benefits you actually have with this plan. A lot of people just kind of buy this as a fire extinguisher, hoping you never need to use it, but it's good to just know what you have, just in case that situation ever shows up. So with that, I think we're going to get into a few questions. But John, this crowd has been pretty rowdy tonight, and I've been enjoying it. It's been a great topic, but I wanted to pull out a few comments before we get into the real questions, a few winners. So first of all, Sean asked a question, is FLP available in Washington State? Unfortunately, it's not. That's one of the handful of states that we're not in. It's available in almost the entire country. What's that?
Nothing there, nobody there right
I
now.
know.
Nobody.
They make it so difficult. Unfortunately for Washington State residents, you're in a state that just makes this really difficult. We also had a comment when you were talking about OC spray and mace spray. Somebody quoted Johnny Knoxville saying, "It's like I have gonorrhea of the eyes." I thought that was a great. And then when we were talking about different weapon options, lethal, non-lethal, there was a comment in here. My EDC is a trigger operated extendable boxing glove. Bah!
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty good. I thought that was pretty good. So we've got some fun members in the crowd tonight. But with that, I wanted to get into some of the questions that have been pre-submitted. We're going to get through those first. John, I want to get your opinion on a whole lot of these. Then if we've got some time, obviously we're getting a lot of comments coming through in real time. We'll hit some of those as well. So Ben's question, can I use pepper spray at the point of a verbal threat of violence without criminal issues? Am I covered by FLP if I do?
So, again, from a legal perspective, you're always looking for the triad of ability, opportunity, and jeopardy, right? So ability is, do they have the ability to harm you? And that, in this case, we're talking physical, right? So is he a strong, able-bodied person who can hurt you? Now, okay, then is he the opportunity? So he might say, I'm going to kick your butt, but he lives on another continent. Well, he's not going to be able to kick your butt, right? But he's standing right in front of me, so he has opportunity. He has the ability. And then jeopardy is that idea of his manifested intent. Has he shown in an objective, reasonable way that he intends to do that thing? And so, again, he says a verbal threat of violence. Okay, so let's say an 85-year-old woman is like, you walk over here, I'm going to whoop your old butt, and I'm going to beat you down, boy. Well, she don't really have the ability to beat me down, right? So the triad isn't met. You OC spray grandma for saying, I'll whoop your old butt. You're going to go to jail for that, and probably rightly so. But a reasonable person would look at a threat of somebody who you don't know or something like that, and they say, yeah, I'm going to whoop you. What now? I'm going to get you. No, that's somebody who is an imminent threat of violence, and I didn't want to get in a fight with him, so I used my OC spray to not have to harm him and not have to get hurt and not have to fight. So that triad is met then, and again, you're always going to be asked, it's what you did reasonable. I know I'm speaking a little bit for plenty here for FLP, but FLP covers the use of any legal weapon.
Yep.
And that includes OC spray.
Yeah. And our default perspective on that is if you call in the hotline and say, hey, I had to defend myself, this is what happened, we quickly ascertain that it was a legally carried weapon, our default position is to send the attorney to respond as if everything was legitimate. If we somehow hear something in the case that, like you're talking about, it was that little old lady, we hear something like that and we realize this actually wasn't a self-defense situation, we're going to back off and analyze at that point. But our default position is always, am I covered? We assume yes until we hear otherwise, and we're dispatching accordingly.
Good. Yeah.
So next question is from Joshua. So none of us have your training budget in time or money. How should we allocate what time and money we have in terms of hand-to-hand, less lethal, medical, firearms? I guess what's the breakdown between all these things?
Okay, so Joshua, first of all, I honor that question, and I believe with you. Now, I will say, when I really started training seriously, I was on a very tight budget and very tight time, okay? So for those of you who know my past, I spent 14 years in vocational pastoral ministry. So I started really training seriously. I was a full-time pastor, living on a full-time pastor salary, which ain't much. And so I had a tight budget. Now today, okay, my budget is higher. My time is more available. This is what I do for a living. I think that number one, you don't have to do nearly as much as I do. I try to get 100 hours a year of firearms training. Okay. So I'm at 120 this year. And that's a lot for most people. That's a crazy amount, right? But it's not too much to ask to take 1 day of good firearms training a year. It's not too much to ask every 2-3 years to go take a free Stop the Bleed class from FEMA. So you've got a little bit of medical training. Okay. So those are really easy ones to do, or there are several places even doing that stuff kind of online now. To learn your empty-handed skills is going to take an investment. It's going to take you some regular weekly time, but also I think you can use that as your workout time too, because generally speaking, you're going to get a workout, you're working on your empty-handed skills. So if you can, I would invest some in that as well. Tool use, the cool part is that with a little bit of practice, some dry practice, and a few range trips and one class a year, you can maintain a pretty high level of proficiency with firearms without too big of an investment.
Awesome. So, and that sounds like it's also not just a percentage based thing. It's more kind of like benchmark based.
Yeah,
thing.
and I mean, where do you need work? You know what I mean? So, like, if your handgun skills are super strong, well, maybe it's time to invest in your time and money in some other stuff. If your skills there, if you can, crush the Gabe White's turbo pin standards, you don't need to invest in your handgun skills anymore. You got it, man. Move on.
Yeah.
Decrease there or whatever. So I think it really depends on the person and what your goals and needs are.
We just got this one that came in. Will FLP cover the price of more expensive guns? So in the benefits, if you ever have your firearm confiscated as evidence and it's not returned, FLP will pay fair market value for that firearm up to $1,000. And so what I like to always tell people is, yep, if your defensive gun is an HK, is a Glock, is a Walther, guess what? You get a new HK, Glock or Walther. But if you're carrying that Wilson Combat, you get a nice set of grips.
You get $1,000. But also, I'm a big fan of the fact that, listen, if you invested the money in that gun, hopefully you invested the time and the expertise in learning to use it well, and it did what you needed it to do. And so it was money well spent for you.
Oh, if it does what you need to do, it can't be more worth it than that.
Exactly right.
So Clayton's question, do I need to call 911 if I use non-lethal weapons?
I believe anytime you use force against another person, you should absolutely contact the authorities. That said, I think that you need to take FLP's advice. I would probably, if possible, I would actually call the hotline first. You're going to talk to an attorney and get their opinion on this is exactly what just happened to me. They'll probably tell you, I need you to call 911 and get the police on the way. You want to be cautious in what you say. So you want to have the attorney help you do that. Generally speaking, if you use force against somebody else, you want to get on the phone with 911. That will be an important part of establishing the narrative that you are the offended party. You're the victim. You need help.
Yeah. It timestamps it. It does so much just by doing that. I think that's awesome. Mitch asks, I have a $1 million umbrella policy with Allstate. In the event of a shooting or gun-related criminal arrest or lawsuit, which plan takes priority, FLP or Allstate? Well, my guess right off the bat, you're going to have to really comb through that Allstate policy, but most likely they're not going to cover any of this. There may be some portions that they cover, but in general, anything that's set up as insurance is not going to cover an intentional act. And if you pull a firearm, pull OC spray, whatever it is, and you intentionally use it and you state, yes, I intentionally did this, they're going to say, insurance is for in case of emergency, something happened to you and we're trying to financially make you whole again. That's kind of the difference between a lot of insurance, just mainline policies, home, renters, auto, umbrella policies. And that's kind of why we exist, because a lot of insurance policies don't cover this kind of stuff. Now, there may be some situations where there's property that's damaged. There's other things that they may be able to kick in for. But in terms of your legal fees, your self-defense, everything associated with that, FLP takes priority. If there's other home damage or whatnot, that's probably where that Allstate policy would kick in. But you're going to have to talk to your Allstate agent about that, because these
and usually those are liability policies too. So they cover your liability in some kind of an act. So that would be, if you cause damage to somebody's car, or if you're ordered to pay damages, perhaps civilly or something like that, then that might get into play. But they're certainly not going to cover your attorney's fees. They are not going to cover, all the myriad costs of your legal defense.
Yeah, and even the benefit we just mentioned, paying you back for the firearm, that they're probably not going to do any of that. So I'm not saying it's a bad idea to also have that umbrella policy. More protection, if you can afford it, is always better. But FLP is going to take precedent there.
Yeah, I think, the $1 million umbrella policy is really, really great when a kid slips on your pool deck and, ends up in the hospital or something. That's when that really kicks in and is really, really good for you, not necessarily during a defensive shooting.
Yep, exactly. So Adolfo sent in this question: if the attack doesn't warrant use of deadly force, but the use of non-lethal aggravates the offender and the aggression escalates, is it legal and or moral to use deadly force at this point? And this is almost like opposite the video we just watched.
Yeah, well, so I think, Adolfo, if I think I understand your question, okay, so it's an ordinary threat. I use a non-lethal tool, right? So I OC spray somebody. It makes him more madder, and all of a sudden he now pulls a knife on me. is it legal and or moral to use deadly force at that point? Well, listen, if I respond in a reasonable manner to the threat that I currently faced, and I was not the aggressor. So again, this is going to assume that innocence happens, right? That you are not the instigator or provoker of the problem, and that you are a good, sane, sober, moral, prudent person. So given those things, and a guy comes up and says, "Give me $1." You go, "Hey, I got $1 for you, man." He goes, "Yeah, I'm gonna beat your butt," or whatever. And you go, "Nah, man," and you OC spray him. Then he gets more mad and he pulls a bat on you. Well, okay, wait a minute. Who instigated the physical threat? He did. And so I responded to that with good, reasonable force to stop that threat. Then he escalated again to a deadly threat. And so I responded to that with deadly force. So generally that's okay, as I am not the one escalating the conflict. If you escalate the conflict, though, then you become the aggressor, and I don't want you to be that person. And remember, he escalated the conflict by threatening physical force. He put you at reasonable fear, at a belief that he was going to harm you, and that harm was imminent. And so he's the one who escalated the conflict both times.
Gotcha. Yeah, and it's that continued escalation of force that's interesting, and it's interesting too that this is almost always, you have to view it as this like third party objective observer of in terms of levels of force.
Well, and that's what's going to happen. The jury,
Yeah.
the finder of fact is exactly going to be that. And so you just go, "Hey, is this going to be that am I acting reasonably here?" And what would a good person? I don't want to escalate a conflict, but I can respond to the existing conflict reasonably and appropriately.
Yep. So Kirk asks, this is kind of part of the presentation we just went through, but a good reminder, what type of threat does the use of pepper spray classify as?
It's considered ordinary use of force. It is probably, there's all this kind of continuum of stuff. It's probably considered greater than what we call soft hands, because if I just put hands on somebody and like push, like softly push them out the door, right? I say, "Hey, get out of my store." They go, "No." And I go, "Sir," and I grab them by the elbow and kind of nudge him, right? We'd call that a soft hands approach. So more than that, less than punching someone in the face because it doesn't injure. Okay. So it's somewhere in between those two.
So it's not even it's interesting. It almost throws the question back that it doesn't even classify as anything specifically because it's kind of in that middle ground.
Right. Yeah. And it doesn't injure. So it's a thing. And again, intent does matter, because if I want to cause you suffering, well, now I could be the aggressor and it could be considered assault.
Gotcha.
Because now I'm trying to cause you pain and suffering, right? And I put you at threat of pain and suffering. But if instead I go, "Whoa, I don't want to fight you," stop that so you don't fight me anymore. So the way that I talk about it, one of the reasons that I say you want to maybe call the hotline is so that you can talk that through with the attorney real quick, so you don't say something stupid on 911. Because remember, the second you hit send on that 911 call, it's being recorded.
Yep. Last one we got here. We may go hit up just some of the live ones just real quick. Daryl says,
I'm not in a rush.
How likely is one to assume that they'll be sued in civil court post sauce use?
Well, anybody can sue anyone for anything at any time, right? So we live in a litigious society. You can be sued for a reasonable use of force. I think that especially when we're talking about this low a level, you probably wouldn't be talking about huge amounts, because OC spray is not going to cause somebody to be hospitalized. It's not going to cause somebody, to end up dead. And so one of the things that we'll do there, I mean, you're probably talking small claims court. If anything, he ruined my shirt or whatever. And so the chances of that from that kind of thing are pretty slim. And the funny part, what we really see is that unless you are in an incredibly high profile place, the number of civil suits that come from justified defensive uses of force are very, very few.
Yeah.
If you don't get convicted of aggravated assault, now you get convicted of ag assault, you might well face a civil suit after that. But you get found justified in criminal court. Okay, Kyle Rittenhouse looks like he's facing some civil suits because there's big dollars they're getting batted about there. But that is a real rarity in use of stuff, unless you're in the government. When I do expert witness stuff, in civil court, if it's not the government, very rare, very rare.
And what I think is interesting too is that a lot of these cases, it is personal defense, or all these examples that we looked at. So many of them happened. Somebody comes up to me in a crowd, in a shop, in some situation like that, And then I think very quickly, the second the aggressor takes that hit to the face, it's a big reminder of, oh, I was in the wrong here. Yeah, I maybe not want to take this to court. And
Right?
so it seems to be a
100%.
big reminder.
And okay, if you want to take it to court, we're going to see how big a crap bag you actually are.
And to that point, though, it does happen. And I can speak to, I am aware of multiple suits that FLP has defended on behalf of members where there was one was a dog. There have been several with people where pepper spray has been involved and there has been a lawsuit. And a lot of it just comes down to, even if it's a BS bogus claim, do you want to take time away from work, from your family to go fight this thing? Even if it's a small little thing, let FLP do that for you. Even if it's not the most probable thing, compared to something like a firearm where the cops are always going to be called when there's a report of gunfire. Always, it's just better to have it to let FLP handle that rather than having to deal with any of that stuff.
Well, and having somebody who's expert in that and being able to reach into the well and go, oh, we have an expert who knows OC spray really well. So we can, and here, ready for some fun stuff here? We can make some expert disclosures and we can get over the motions in limine, and we can, in discovery, say, hey, these are the arguments we're going to make to the other side, and they stop talking nicely. And if you don't know that stuff and you're like, I got to go find all those guys, man, it's a crapshoot. So having experts that know they're doing that, I mean, I've been a member of FLP for years and years for a reason.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Here's an interesting one that we saw. OC has an expiration date. So
that's absolutely
you don't
true.
Spray orange water.
It's usually not because of it's actually never because of the contents inside the canister. It's always the valving that starts having problems. I know that. So I'm not trying to be specific to a brand here. But I can tell you probably won't be able to see it. But this is a palm canister, and there's an actual expiration date on the bottom. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to show you guys that with this here. But they've got an actual printed date. And the reason that they do that is because they can't guarantee that the nozzle, the plastic in the nozzle will extend beyond that. It almost always does, but they can't guarantee it. So I always tell folks, generally speaking, every other year, these little guys are $13. For golly sakes. It's not like it's a big expense to go buy yourself a new one on your birthday, just so you don't have that problem again.
Yeah. Yeah. Also from the same person, OC saved me from dogs. From 3 dogs once. They weren't playing.
And that's a big deal and very effective. Very effective.
Yeah. So here's another interesting one. If I use my firearm in self-defense in a gun-free zone, will I be covered by FLP in the state of Ohio? If you knowingly walk into a place that is a gun-free zone with a firearm, I think our stance is always going to be, this is where you should use that less than lethal. This is where, if the firearm is prohibited and you knowingly do something like that, it gets very hard to cover. But that's why our service does cover all legal weapons, whether it's something like a knife that is lethal but is not a firearm, or something like OC spray or any of these others. That's why we cover all of them, because there unfortunately are situations like that where you can't carry in the best way or the way that you want to. We definitely have plans for that as well.
I think that's the way to do it. So remember, if you knowingly carry somewhere you're not allowed to carry, you are a lawbreaker and you are in the commission of a crime. And so that's going to be problematic everywhere you go.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think this has been an awesome topic. I learned a lot. I learned a lot about kind of the stuff that's labeled as dog spray versus bear spray versus, personal defense spray, that labeling, the size, the spray patterns. I think there was so much here. Taser, the name brand versus all the other tools. Pretty interesting stuff. So, John, do you have any concluders, any final words before we sign off tonight?
Hey, I don't think it's an either or, right? I carry a firearm and I carry an OC spray every day. I do recommend an OC spray. I think, if you want particular brand suggestions, come over to our stuff and we can make suggestions that we recommend there, just like we always, of course, recommend firearms legal protection. But think about it. Something between a harsh word and a gun. The other thing is I could take OC spray in places that I can't carry guns. It says no firearms allowed. Great. This is not a weapon. And so in a lot of places now, be careful. I do want you to be careful. Don't try to take one of these on an airplane. Don't try to take it into a courtroom. You do stuff like that, you'll end up in the hoosegow, and you do not want to end up in the hoosegow. Okay, so don't do that. So be cautious, everyone, and learn your lesson.
Awesome. I mean, I can't conclude it any better than that. I think this has been awesome. FLP members, thank you for joining. You can get some great deals on that pepper spray, that OSP spray, and some other products if you check out the Discount Genius section. If you're not yet an FLP member, check out the link below. You'll get one heck of a deal. And I wish everybody a good night. Remember, firearms legal protection. Protect yourself. We'll protect you. Night, everybody.